What if the universe wouldn't exist without your awareness to witness it? Not as a metaphor, but as a cosmic law. What if everything you see, touch, and experience only exists because you are conscious of it? It sounds impossible. But even the sharpest minds in science can't explain what consciousness actually is. They can measure brain waves, map neurons, track chemicals, but none of it answers the deeper mystery. Where does you begin? How does mere flesh become aware of beauty, loss, the passing of time, and the ache of existence itself? This is the question that breaks science. David Chalmers called it the hard problem of consciousness, because no lab, no MRI, no machine has ever found the origin of the soul. But the ancients didn't need machines. Vedanta, Hermeticism, Gnostic cosmology, they all whispered the same truth. Consciousness is not in the universe is in consciousness. Modern physics now echoes this idea. Quantum experiments show that matter behaves differently when observed. Simulated universe theories suggest the world might render itself around awareness, and near-death experiences describe perception outside the body, non-local, eternal, alive. So ask yourself, if the soul is the true observer, then what is it really observing? And more importantly, why? The science of consciousness and the nature of the soul begins now. Part 1. The consciousness problem. Science can't explain it. What is consciousness? Not thoughts, not memory, not intellect, but that silent awareness behind it all. The one listening right now. The you behind your eyes. For decades, neuroscience has claimed that consciousness is simply a byproduct of the brain. That self-awareness emerges from electrical impulses, neural networks, and biochemical reactions. But here's the problem. No scientist has ever located the source of consciousness. You can stimulate a memory. You can trigger a muscle. You can even alter emotions with drugs. But no matter how deeply you scan the brain, you'll never find the observer. This is what philosopher David Chalmers famously called the hard problem of consciousness. Because while we can explain how the brain processes information, we can't explain why any of it is experienced. Why does a specific frequency of sound feel like music? Why does a moment of beauty move us to tears? Why does pain hurt? There is no neural map for I am. And that's where the materialist model begins to crack. Now consider the anomalies. Split-brain patients, after their brain hemispheres are severed, can display two distinct centers of awareness. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it, like two minds inside one skull. One eye perceives, the other insists it saw nothing at all. So who is the I? Or take lucid dreams. In deep sleep, when your senses are offline and your body is paralyzed. Somehow you become aware inside a world your brain didn't consciously create. Then there are near-death experiences. People clinically dead, no heartbeat, no brain activity, report floating above their bodies, observing doctors, hearing conversations, traveling through light. Renowned cardiologist Dr. Pim van Lommel spent decades researching these cases. His conclusion: consciousness is not produced by the brain, it is received by it. Just like a radio doesn't create music. It tunes into it, and that aligns with another voice, Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, a physicist and philosopher. He suggests the opposite of materialism, that consciousness is the fundamental layer of reality, that matter is not the cause, but the effect. And if that's true, everything changes. Because now, consciousness isn't something you have, it's something you are. These ideas aren't just theory, they're reflected in military experiments like remote viewing, where trained individuals accurately described distant locations with no sensory input, no eyes, no contact, just awareness. And here's the twist. Many of these experiments worked. So what does this mean? It means your consciousness may be non-local, not bound by brain, body, or time. It means the you observing your life might not be inside your head at all. And if that's the case, if the brain is only a filter, then the real source of consciousness lies somewhere else. Which raises the ancient question once again. What is the soul? Where does it come from? And why does it choose to look out through human eyes? To answer that, we must turn to the wisdom that predates science, to the mystics, sages, and seers, who didn't ask what consciousness is. They asked why it exists in the first place, because for them, consciousness wasn't an accident. It was the origin of everything. Part 2. The Ancient Teachings. Consciousness is the universe. If modern science can't explain consciousness, ancient wisdom never had that problem. Because long before brain scans and neural networks, mystics around the world had already arrived at the same answer. Consciousness isn't in the universe is in consciousness. In Vedanta, one of the oldest spiritual systems on earth, they speak of two concepts, Brahman and Atman. Brahman is the infinite, formless, eternal, unchanging. Atman is the soul, the true self within. But the most powerful revelation, Brahman and Atman are the same. The universe and the soul are not separate. The observer and the observed are not two. The Upanishads say, Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. In other words, the cosmos isn't happening around you. It's happening through you. Now jump across the world to ancient Egypt and Greece. Hermeticism, born from the Egyptian god Thoth and echoed through Greek philosophy, teaches all is mind. Everything you see, every star, every atom, every thought, is a projection of divine intelligence. You're not in a physical universe that creates consciousness. You're inside a mental construct of the one conscious mind. The emerald tablet whispers, as above, so below, as within, so without. This is not metaphor, it's the geometry of reality. And then there are the Gnostics. They believed the soul is a fragment of divine light, trapped in a material illusion, veiled by forgetfulness, manipulated by false creators. But that divine spark is not lost. It's asleep. And awakening is simply remembering what you truly are. You are not the role, not the name, not the flesh. You are the observer behind the veil. And that's what the demiurge feared. Because once the soul remembers, the illusion dissolves. From the deserts of the Middle East to the mountains of Tibet. From shamanic tribes in the Amazon to mystics in the Himalayas, the teachings echo the same truth. Spirit is not inside the world. Spirit is the world. Indigenous traditions don't talk of consciousness as a brain function. They describe a spirit field, an invisible web connecting plants, animals, ancestors, and stars. To them, everything is alive, because everything is aware. So what happens when we die? According to these ancient teachings, nothing ends, because consciousness cannot die. The body fades, the thoughts dissolve, but the observer continues. And perhaps that's why déjà vu exists, why we feel drawn to people we've never met, why we dream of places we've never been. Because if consciousness is the foundation of reality, if the soul is not bound by time or form, then memory itself may be deeper than we think. So the question isn't, where do memories go when we die? The question is, where are they stored, and how do we find them again? Part 3. The soul as observer. What lives beyond the brain? If the brain is not the source of consciousness, then what is? What watches your thoughts even when the mind is racing? What notices your dreams even when the body sleeps? What remembers the ache of lifetimes you never lived and whispers truths you were never taught? That is the soul. But not the soul as religion paints it, fragile, bound to judgment or reward. This is the observer, the timeless, non-local awareness behind all experience, not a passenger in the body, but a traveler through reality itself. In Buddhism, they call it Rigpa, the pure awareness that sees all phenomena arise and dissolve. In Vedanta, it is the Sakshi, the silent witness behind mind and matter. In modern spiritual psychology, it's the higher self, a vantage point untouched by trauma, fear, or time. And this self has no coordinates. It's not in your head, it's not even in your body, because it isn't inside reality. It observes reality into being. Consider reincarnation. How is it that children across cultures, some as young as 3, can recall names, faces, homes, and even causes of death from lives they never lived? How can memories surface in regression sessions? Not as fantasies, but with detailed geographic, historical, and emotional precision, if consciousness was just a product of this body. These things would be impossible. But if the soul is the observer, then it is not tied to a single life. It moves through them, gathers experience, stores memory, not in neurons but in fields. The ancients called it the Akashic record, a vibrational library encoded into the fabric of space. It's not stored in a brain, it's accessed by resonance, just like a radio doesn't contain music. It simply tunes into the station. So too, your soul tunes into lifetimes. Past, present, or even parallel. Déjà vu, soul resonance, sudden recognition of a stranger's eyes. These aren't dreams, these are echoes. You're not imagining, you're remembering. Quantum physics now echoes this mystery. In the double-slit experiment, particles change behavior based on whether they are observed. Let that sink in. The mere act of observing reality alters it. So what happens when the soul, the master observer, turns its gaze? What happens when you become conscious of being conscious? Time slows. Patterns surface. The illusion starts to bend. Because you're not just participating in reality, you're co-creating it. This isn't abstract mysticism. It's embedded in the language of quantum mechanics, metaphysics, and mystic visions alike. And it reveals something staggering. Reality is not something that happens to you. It happens through you. And the observer, the soul, is the key. But if this is true, if the soul is this aware, this vast, this eternal, why don't we remember? Why do we stumble through life as if blindfolded? Why do we forget the lives we've lived, the truths we once knew, the observer we really are? The answer lies not in the body, not even in the brain, but in a veil placed over memory itself, a veil that hides not just the past, but the very reason you came here. And now, it's time to lift it. Part 4. The Veil of Forgetting. Why we're cut off from our true nature. If the soul is eternal, if it remembers lifetimes, dimensions, and higher truths, then why, when we enter this life, Do we forget? Why are we born as if blank slates, with no memory of who we were or why we came? Across ancient spiritual traditions, this mystery has one name: the veil of forgetting. In Hinduism, it's called Maya, the illusion that cloaks the soul's true identity. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's the state of bardo, where clarity fades as the soul prepares to incarnate. In Gnostic cosmology, it's the trap, a system designed by false light forces to suppress remembrance. But here's the paradox. Forgetting is part of the plan. You chose to forget so you could truly experience, so you could immerse yourself fully in this reality, make real choices, face real tests, and evolve through genuine struggle. If you remembered everything effortlessly, there'd be no journey, no challenge, no transformation. The soul didn't come here to coast. It came here to grow, but over time, something went wrong. The veil thickened, not just from spiritual amnesia, but from trauma, suppression, and manipulation. The Gnostics warned us that the false gods, archons, feed off our confusion. They maintain the illusion. They deepen the forgetfulness by keeping us entangled in fear, shame, guilt, and distraction. And in the modern world, this system is more alive than ever. Think about it. We wake up and check our phones. We fill our minds with noise, comparison, outrage. We numb ourselves with endless scrolling, addictive food, and synthetic stimulation. In forgetting how to sit with silence, we surrendered to a world screaming with distraction. And slowly, the signal from the self fades, drowned beneath static we mistook for reality, buried beneath obligations, opinions, and other people's expectations. But the veil isn't permanent, and it was never meant to be. There are ancient technologies, spiritual tools to thin it, pierce it, and eventually lift it. Meditation quiets the noise and reopens the inner channel. Breathwork shifts consciousness and unlocks emotional memory. Past life regression helps you retrieve echoes from incarnations past. Shadow work integrates the hidden parts of yourself, revealing patterns that transcend lifetimes. These aren't New Age fads. They're resurrection tools, keys passed down through mystery schools, shamans, monks, and mystics. Because once the veil lifts, something ancient stirs. A knowing returns, a frequency reactivates, and the dream begins to dissolve. You begin to see not just who you are, but who you've always been. And in that stillness, when remembrance returns, the dream ends. The real journey begins, because when the soul remembers, it doesn't just awaken, it becomes the architect of reality itself. Part 5. Awakening to the True Self, Living as Consciousness Incarnate. What happens when the soul finally remembers? When the veil thins, and you realize you were never just the body, never just the story, never just the character in the simulation, but the one watching it all unfold. This is what the mystics called awakening. Not a moment of religious ecstasy, not a dramatic miracle, but a quiet, radical shift. From being in the dream to becoming aware of the dreamer, you start to see every reaction, every emotion, every trigger was never about the world. It was a mirror, a projection, a message. Because you're not here to survive reality, you're here to shape it. And once you realize you are the observer, not the observed, something changes forever. Your choices begin to shift, not out of fear or conditioning, but out of truth. You stop chasing validation. You stop obeying fear. you begin aligning with something deeper. A soul frequency that cuts through illusion like a blade of light. This is what the ancient yogis called Atma Jnana, the knowledge of the self. What the Gnostics called pleroma, the fullness of divine essence. What the Hermeticists saw as the reunion of mind and cosmos. You remember not just past lives, but your eternal nature. And from this remembrance comes power, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that liberates. Because a soul that knows who it is no longer bound by old timelines. It no longer carries karma blindly. It stops looping through fear-based decisions and begins living in flow. This is how reality bends. This is how destiny shifts. This is how lifetimes of struggle collapse into clarity. When the soul takes the reins again, like a dreamer lost in a dream, believing it real until one moment of stillness reminds them they were the dreamer all along. But then, a moment of stillness, a pause, a glitch in the loop, and suddenly, the player remembers, this isn't who I am. I'm not this name. I'm not this story. I'm the one behind the screen, the one who chose to play. And with that awareness, the simulation cracks. The soul reclaims the controller. You begin living not from reaction, but from resonance. Not from fear of what comes next, but from knowing you're the one writing it. And now, you see it, you feel it, you remember. Final question. If you are the one watching this entire experience, then are you ready to truly open your eyes and become the consciousness you've always been? The soul did not descend to sleep. It came to remember through struggle, through silence, through awakening. And the time is now. Final CTA. If consciousness is the source of reality, not the result, then awakening isn't optional. It's your only true power. Because you are not the effect. You are the cause, the observer, the dreamer, the one the world has been waiting for. To wake up. Subscribe now. And step deeper into the truth of who you are. Not a body with a soul, but a soul infinite and aware, experiencing itself through time and form. And in the next episode, we dive into the shadows to uncover the forgotten power of the hidden rituals of ancient magicians, spells, symbols, frequency, intention. What did the ancients know about manipulating reality itself? And why was it hidden? Join us, because this journey is just beginning, and the deeper you go, the more you remember.